Hi, Browning.
Hey Miriam, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, the weather is good today, and we're almost in October, so no problem.
Can you tell me a little? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I've been I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been in and out of the tech industry and other sort of mainstream industries most of my life. Lived around all over the world, and I'm now living in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the Midwest of all places. But when I came here, I started up a digital health company called the Wewa Life. It's a personal health navigation platform, really focused on the consumer and the consumer's need to take control of their health journey.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about Mimi?
Yeah, Mimi was really an offshoot. I participated in a recent challenge competition to develop a product for medication reconciliation, adherence, and care transitions. It's part of a government-sponsored kind of tech private sector initiative to help with innovation. It's an organization called AHRQ, Agency for Health Research and Quality. And in that, we had to write a narrative initially in the first phase of the competition about how would we address these key issues, fundamental issues that are facing not just the United States, but the world. But in the United States, they kind of bracketed at a $290 billion problem per year that incorporates medication, adherence, and reconciliation. There's an interesting quote I found this morning that I think really addresses it. It said, adherence is like an ecosystem, interdependent, ever-changing, and much of it is out of sight. So that's, the problem. We don't know that, why people don't take their medications, why they won't adhere to things. So this competition, part of it, I felt that, with the emergence of voice being kind of a new operating system, I became intrigued by what was going on there, particularly with the Alexa skill developments. And I came across your organization. I assume it's AI communications, but the Coco Hub and what you're doing with that. And I was fascinated by the conversational design aspect, because so many of the skills you see out there are these robotic voices that don't really have that engagement with empathy. And I think that's the number one thing, is building trust and empathy, particularly in the health sector. So Mimi is our voice, digital voice assistant that we created. It's named after my grandmother, so it was kind of near and dear to me. I thought that name was an easy one to remember and something that kind of was soft on the tongue and not too aggressive. And it sounded like it just gave me memories of my grandmother. And I thought, well, that would be a perfect one for this caregiver. So we embarked on trying to develop. I had an initial script that I had created and some initial voice bots I had developed. I actually worked with a gentleman, Dr. Robert Kolak, who's a career physician and administrator who had been doing some programming on his own. But I felt like the language was very, as they get in, robotic, and we needed to incorporate this human element to it. So that's what brought me to speaking to your organization. I felt that I was fascinated by that and how important that was. And that's what we led us to getting Mimi up and running.
So what can she do now? What can Mimi do?
Well, we focused on some very basic things. I mean, obviously, this is the first stage of an ever-increasing, universe of voice bots. But we focused on how it could tie into medication adherence and medication reconciliation. But more importantly, I wanted to tie it into, I used that word ecosystem before, I wanted to tie it into the Wewa Life platform. So, like many apps today, Alexa skills are sort of on these islands. They sit out there in these individual segments, and there's really a very low adoption rate or utilization. They may adopt, but the adherence, the utilization rate gets quite low. So I approached this as being something that would be fully integrated over time with our app and our platform. So that in order to get to Mimi, you would have to come in and download our app, and that becomes the voice of our app in a sense. But in its early stages, you have some limitations on how far you can integrate it. But we started out by becoming sort of an augmentation to our app, and also the kind of a lowest common denominator for somebody who doesn't have access to a phone perhaps, or doesn't have their fingers, they're old, they can't type keys. The voice was like the ideal situation. So we started out by trying to make it a friendly and giving them some simple options, like identifying the equivalent of adding to your medicine cabinet, so you could tell Mimi what medicines you're on. Mimi goes through with a a kind of a quiz through her initial introduction that kind of asks you about your medication adherence, some questions. It gives us an idea of how likely are you to stop your medication. So then it cues us to maybe respond in certain ways. We have health tips. We have medication reminders, some pretty basic things, some things that you could potentially do on a basic Alexa skill now, but those Alexa skills are very rigid and not very friendly. I think by bringing this voice of Mimi and the empathetic side of it, making it more natural language and making it more conversational, we can build on this whole profile where people will see this as a companion. And so that's where we are right now with it. But there's many things we can do, but we wanted to demonstrate first that you could link it from an app. Today you can engage it right from the app. You through their Alexa direct link now, you'll be able to engage your Alexa skills, so it automatically connects out the profile we have on our app and on our platform with the Alexa skills. So now, you know, when you're talking to Alexa, it's immediately engaged. There's not a long log on process or setup, and it really reduces the complication of engaging the two. So that's where we are right now, but there's many possibilities with it.
Where do you see this going? Where do you see Mimi going?
You know, I see Mimi as becoming this, you know, as I say, the voice of our platform. That I think in the future, as you're, you know, as a Mimi asks you things, the data you may ask you a reminder. We have reminders is another thing. We have a general reminder. Like every day she'll log on and kind of have a conversation with you just to stimulate dialogues. Many people may be homebound, don't have caregivers. The caregivers are remote. So here's a situation where you have this voice can come on and ask how you feel today, and that information can translate into our app, and it keeps track. Maybe you're on a medication that you don't feel very well about taking. So it starts to give signals to us about how somebody is feeling, and that information can then be basically transcribed or recorded into our database. It then appears on an app, so that if you're sharing the app, which is one of the features we have with our app, you can share it with caregivers or primary care physicians. And some of this information, you decide on what the level of sharing you want to have, but it starts to become this total, as I say, ecosystem that's fully integrated. So where it will go is, I see that in the future, voices is that operating system that will allow you to, you know, run your life.
Why did you decide to go with this, with Mimi and generally with WeWa Life?
Yeah, well, you know, WeWa Life is the origin of WeWa Life. You know, I started out the original concept. You know, the real underlying concept of WeWa Life is the idea of personalization of health. And one of the aspects that's not in an app, because we built this app, is really much, I see that technology has two fronts you have to look at. You have to look at the process side of it, which is just programming and writing kind of this, taking the real world and putting in kind of this linear process in a way that you can put into an app. But also, I think what's missing quite often is the human side of this, because when particularly as you come to health and medication and wellness, it's all about the individual. And our healthcare industry has been founded on, and the goal was founded on group average studies, these random control trials and so forth that are group average. So when we look at things, it's all about what the averages does or doesn't do. Well, we're in an era where it's very much about personalized health and wellness, and everybody reacts differently. You know, today these are all basic disciplines people look at, but I don't think they're like sort of they're individual buckets. If you combine all that together, you can start to get a very interesting profile of somebody that helps them understand themselves, helps the doctor understand them, and maybe gets us away from this one-size-fits-all approach to whether it's health or wellness or medication. I mean, everything like that. That was the origin of WeWa Life, and the name WeWa came from. I was reading a journal about a journalist writing an article about the Congo, and in the Congo, the word WeWa means you or your. It's a dialect. And I always thought that was a very easy name to remember for an internet. And so it's WeWa, and then when .life came, I would say it's your life. So that's really what I wanted this to be, was your life. Because when you think about an electronic medical record you might have with your hospital or some other, that's not yours, that's somebody else's data. So in this case, you know, WeWa Life this is your life, how you want to control it. And it's not just yours. You can have your friends and family. You can link to people, your children. So it's one place that you control, you decide how that data is released, but you know, it helps you to manage your health navigation, and it's helping to also treat health like an economic strategy. We can't just think it as an incident. We have to look at it just like we put money in the bank. We need to save our health and figure out how do we do that. And most people don't have this. So WeWa Life needs to educate people, give them the resources, and also give them the help. And I think that's one of the things where Mimi can really be helpful, is that people need to speak to others. And, you know, we're not all motivated the same way. Some people have intrinsic motivation, some people have extrinsic motivation, some people, you know, they all operate differently. But I think at the end, we all want to be treated as human beings. And we like to think that there's somebody who, whether it's a health coach, a life coach, or somebody who is concerned and empathetic towards us. That's really what I see a Mimi doing, is somebody who is a voice to them, that's supporting them, that's not judging people, but helping them to get better, and using the platform, it helps to identify over time, so that, you know, in the future, you know, Mimi could come up and start asking them a question. They see a health incident that comes up on their file in their app, and then Mimi can come up and ask them. So I see you recently discharged from a hospital. You know, would you like some assistance at your at-home care, or, you know, somebody who's caring for you? Because I know this is a big burden for many families. Is, you know, all of a sudden their parents get older, and now you have to take care of your parents, and you don't know where to start. And you might be in a different location, you might not see them very often, and you really don't know what to do. And the hospitals are not great. They give you a form when you're discharged from a hospital, or the doctor gives you a report, and then it's like left to you to figure out how to do all of this. In the meantime, you're trying to run your own life, you have a family, you're trying to juggle all these things. So that's sort of what we're targeting Mimi to be, and We Will Life to be. And I think ultimately it also needs to deal with levels of language literacy and health literacy. So, you know, we're not all, you know, on top of our game. We're not all, we haven't all figured this out. And sometimes it's a challenge, you know, speaking to a physician and not understanding what they're saying, or the physician not understanding what you have to say. So this is, again, over time should be able to deal with language issues, literacy issues. We have built into our app will be sort of medication, from a medication adherence perspective. You'll be able to see a pictogram, so you can see what the medication dosage should look like. The dosage is written in a like a 6th grade English. So for people where English is not their first language, this is something that you can see, because that's where many problems occur with medication, is people take the wrong dosage at the wrong time, or the wrong medication, and they just see these boxes on pills on their table, and they start taking them, and sometimes they continue to take medications they shouldn't take. And then that has these adverse reactions that then cause them to end up in the emergency room, and it creates this vicious cycle, which I started in the conversation telling you, that's a $290 billion problem in the United States, which is just enormous when you're thinking about the number of deaths that come from that. Plus, I think also the psychological turmoil within families. You think about the repercussions when all this happens, something goes wrong and medications are bad. So, you know, I think it touches a lot of different issues and things that I think would be ultimately good for everyone. But the key is just, you know, adopting this. And so I think Mimi was, again, part of helping people to adopt. Not everybody is comfortable with taking a little smartphone and dealing with an app, but people could be comfortable as a first step of talking to a digital voice assistant.
We talked a little bit about where do you see this in the future, but where do you see the healthcare and like medical adherence in like 5 or let's say 5 years?
Yeah, you know, I think it's in the past decade or more, this, you know, medication adherence and reconciliation has been a problem forever. And it's a problem that if you look at any academic journals, read about it, they haven't been able, as they say, move the needle to change it very much. And, you know, my feeling is a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've been concentrating on, we have this concept of mechanism of change, but it's a lot about kind of this singular point solutions. And now we start looking at individuals, I think that's where the future really lies. And, you know, in everything in medicine, and like they call this P4 medicine, where it's very personalized. And I think that's where we're going to start to see in the next 5 years in so many different regards, as we can, you know, get more data on this and follow people, and we start treating it more as individuals. I think we have a chance of really changing this negative trajectory we are on. You know, we have this kind of avalanche of health that is, you know, starts sometimes in your 40s, and then you get to a point where you just can't change it. And that's why we have this, you know, we have obesity all over the world. We have all these problems that people find out almost too late, or they start dealing with it too late. So, you know, I think I have great hope for it, but I think, you know, technology is part of the solution. I think we really have to address the people side of that. And that's why I've really focused on like Mimi and trying to make this so that there's a very human element to this. And we also very personalized. So you treat like, you know, everybody looks at these stuff as kind of what's in it for me. So we have to look at, you know, what is Mira going to get out of this? You know, what does she want out of this? How you're going to be motivated to change your health is different than maybe your sister or brother or friend. So you're not all going to want to do a steps program. You're not all going to want that judgmental side. You're going to have different ways. So I think in the future, you know, that we have to change it, because in the United States, you know, we're moving away from this cradle to grave insurance system that we had, my father and mother had, to where, you know, it's very much on your own. And I think the pandemic has really woken people up to realize how important taking control of their health, not just in terms of whether they're, when they're sick, because I think we all are young, we think about, all right, we don't have to worry about that now. We don't have to worry about it, you know, but it's the type of thing, I think it's waking up people to realize, I want to have more control. I want to have more options. I want to know more about these things for me, my family, everyone else involved. So I think as long as we, you know, there's just kind of tsunami of things happening right now that I think is alerting people and changing the way we think about it. Now we just have to open up systems. I think one of the biggest challenges we've had in the United States is interoperability, that everything is in these silos. And so therefore, you know, we don't have, in this era where you can capture your picture every day of your life and see what you look like, you can't do that from a health perspective now, because quite often your information is scattered across hospital systems, and at least in the United States. You may have a single system in Israel, but it's a problem in the United States where it's scattered everywhere, and we don't have a good single place to get this information. And hopefully that's changing, and we'll have this ability to control our data, give data where we want to give it. It's not just this black box technology that we're living with, and we just expect it's going to happen. So there's going to take a while to change, but I think we're on the cusp of a really major change, and it's caused by a lot of different factors: technology, society, you know, lots of different things.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was so interesting. It sounds amazing, and good luck with the competition.